Hello everyone, this is Gene and I'm back with a new video. And since it is indeed Catterday, it's Saturday and Saturday is Catterday, I wanted to start off the video with some good, wholesome kitty fan service. We are big fans of kitty fan service in this house. Alright, RJ, good boy, you can go now. Alright, so I just wanted to give my brief thoughts on this. I'm trying to keep videos a bit briefer, or at least as brief as I can keep anything. But I've seen this floating around a little bit. And here's the thing: there's this person, Eugene Lee Yang or Yang, I'm not quite sure how you say it, right? Who says we're entering a new era of Asian action heroes in major studio projects after fighting long and hard to be represented in our own culture's stories. Change is happening. Kids are starting to see themselves in lead characters with complex lives who kick ass. I'm beyond pumped. Well, here's the thing. First of all, I want to be clear. I'd like to believe that this message is well intentioned, right? And again, I have no issue with more Asian representation or new Asian representation, right? I'm well aware of the fact that my generation, the 90s kids, are getting old, right? I'm in my mid 30s. Some are hitting close to or hitting their 40s, and that's just the passage of time, right? What was once popular and new and all that eventually becomes established if it sticks around long enough. It becomes established, and what was your youth culture eventually becomes part of the past, right? If you live long enough, you experience this, right? Your heroes grow old. What was once new to you ends up on the classic station, right? And all that stuff. And that's fine. That's just normal. I have nothing new. I have no problem, I should say, with anything new coming up that has to happen in entertainment, right? It's like with pro wrestling, right? It's a young man's game, right? Even the old guard have to retire eventually. Like a lot of the stars of the Attitude Era that I grew up with, the new generation in the Attitude Era of the 1990s and the 2000s are old or retired. Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, and many more. So I get it. I have no issue with a new era of Asian action heroes, right? What I get a little frustrated with is this whole thing of like fighting long and hard to be represented in our own culture stories. Here's the thing. At least with the images he has here, there you are not being represented in your culture stories. These are not being made in Japan or China or in, I think that's Rhea on the bottom under the Shang-Chi one, or in this case Southeast Asia, if that is indeed Rhea. Shang-Chi comes from Iron Fist. Iron Fist comes from the 70s during the whole Kung Fu, Bruce Lee uh, uh, craze back then, right? And he was a side character, a supporting character. Mortal Kombat, which is something I definitely have a very long personal history with, having literally played every major game in the original run from 1992 to about 2006. I quite literally grew up with the franchise. I was 7 years old when the very first game came out in 1992. Right, Mortal Kombat as a franchise, right, is next year is going to be I think 30, right? 92, 2021. So it'll be 30 years old next year, right? You are not being represented in um, your culture stories. These are not made in Japan or made in China or whatnot. There are plenty of works made in Japan and made in China, manga, anime, wushu films, and stuff like that. But these ain't it. These aren't it. These are American or Americanized takes on certain elements of Asian culture, right? It's basically Asia through, or certain elements of Asian culture, and even that, is very diverse, right? Are we talking about Japan, China, Vietnam? Are we talking about India, and or Pakistan, all those different countries, right? They're not the same. They may be very similar, but they're not the same. So I'm sorry, with all due respect to Mr. Yang here, but you're not being represented in your own culture stories. You're being represented in a very stylized American take of certain elements of quote unquote Asian warrior culture, right? Again, none of these are American works. Even Warrior, I think, is based off the writings of Bruce Lee, right? Off of his the books and notes that he kept, right? But again, it's not being made in China. It's not being even being made in Hong Kong, right? So you are not being represented in your own culture stories, buddy. You are being represented in what, in most instances, and I know for certain with Iron Fist and Mortal Kombat, were made by white people. Okay, so it's like, can we stop? Again, I have no issue with it. I have no issue with Asian representation. We can always use more of everything, but please stop with this idea of, oh, well, we're finally being represented in Asian culture. No, you're not. None of this is Asian culture. This is all an American take on Asian culture, made principally to entertain. Anybody who is even remotely familiar with the history of, say, Ninja knows that Scorpion and Sub Zero make absolutely no sense, right? But we put all that aside because it's not meant to be accurate. It's meant to be entertaining, right? And then it says here, oh, kids are starting to see themselves in lead characters. Again, with this representation thing, I will never understand this need to have someone who looks like you to see yourself in a lead character. That would be like saying that just because there are black females, or half black in my case, females, that they suddenly represent me. The only one I've ever come across, and I've said this before, is Elisa from Gargoyles. And it's awesome that she is. Literally, that's all we have in common, is that we're both biracial women, half Native American, half black, and are both from New York City. That's literally it. That's a happenstance. That's just a quirk of circumstance. Outside of all that, we are not similar at all. We don't have a similar education. We're not the same age. Okay. We both like Goliath, so we have the same taste in men, or at least the same taste in gargoyle men. But different jobs, different everything, and that's fine. I don't like Elisa because we happen to share certain things in common. I like her because I think she's an awesome character who was well written and well acted by Sally Richardson, I believe was her voice actress, and the sort of like character model, right? Right. It was her appearance that the artist based Elisa on. Excuse me. Right. And I want, with the exception of the Mortal Kombat film, I want people to be pumped for these things. I want you to be happy with it, right? But these type of false narratives of there was never representation previously is simply wrong. Okay, I grew up in the 1990s, as y'all know. Okay, and this is gonna sound crazy because I'm always talking about Mortal Kombat, but believe it or not, Mortal Kombat is not my favorite all-time video game franchise. Right? It's one of my favorites, and that's why I talk about it so much because I disagree with the direction it's gone in particular with Mortal Kombat 11. But it's not my like all time favorite number one. It's not. It's like top five, right? But it's actually Street Fighter. Street Fighter is my favorite fighting game and fighting game franchise of all time. I played every Street Fighter game, even the original Street Fighter one, which is hard as hell to play because it's so broken, right? I played that. Or rather, I should say, I have played that. I used to have the anniversary edition and everything. I've played every major Street Fighter title up to 4. After Street Fighter 4, I was like, okay, nothing new here. It's just a few new characters. None of them appeal to me. I don't care about Sea Viper or whatever it is, right? And I know many more. There's been like, what was it, Super 4, as they always do. Super 4, and now there's 5, right? But that is like the Street Fighter 2 in particular. Street Fighter 2 Special Champions Edition for the Genesis is the video game that made me fall in love with video games as a medium. I had played video games previously. I had an NES, like many kids my age at that time did. And I had played many games prior to that, which came from Japan. Castlevania is from Japan. Super Mario is from Japan. Russian Attack, despite the name, is Japanese. So many games came out of Japan when I was young. Street Fighter comes out of Japan. Tekken, Soul Calibur, Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy, just JRPGs as a genre, right, came out of Japan. And us, silly American kids love them. And of course, there are many more across the world who love them also, including in their home country, right? So this idea of, oh, there was never representation until now. I'm like, were you around? Like, how old are you to believe this, right? And again, maybe the representation hasn't always been the most accurate or respectful. I watched enough pro wrestling to know how Japanese talent was treated in the major American companies up until recently. Let's just say not very good, especially in WWE, right? But yeah, there's always been, at least in my experience, a representation, strong representation, uh, of Asian or East Asian in this case, right? Principally Japanese works in American geek media, and at least to my knowledge, and again, it's a very narrow point of view, right? But it was well received. I mean, even when I was in college, we had a gamers club, and the gamers club, because so many games came out of Japan, and because so many of us, were anime and manga geeks, we had a sort of friendship with the Japanese club, and we used to hold events together, and it was awesome. It was cool. And all different types of people were there. Me, other brown skinned people. You had Asians. You had Latinos, whites, men, women. And it was fun. We even tried to do an anime fashion show, but it didn't quite work out. It was cosplay before cosplay got cool. And as I demonstrated in a video a long time ago, right? I met Mr. Fuji, right? Who worked in pro wrestling, and he was in a Asian. He wasn't a wrestler. He was more of a personality manager, and he managed the wrestler Yokozuna, who was a Samoan playing a Japanese sumo wrestler. Pro wrestling is weird, okay? I love it, but it's damned weird. But as this response says, ever hear of Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Jet Li, Sonny Chiba, Chow Yun Fat, Hiroyuki Sanada, Brandon Lee, Michelle Yeoh, Lee Byung Hun? Don't know how you say that. Ming Na Wen, Kelly Hu, James Hong. I also added in there Lucy Liu, because she's had a few action roles, right? So I just disagree with this idea of, oh, you weren't represented previously. That's just not true. Now maybe you weren't always represented respectfully. I will give you that. I'm not trying to say in any way that America has done it right um, in times past. But this idea of, oh, there was no representation until now, is just fascinating to me. It just in how erroneous it is, right? But perhaps it's not my place to comment, being that I am not Asian. But from what I've seen, from my little narrow corner of New York City, in which is an incredibly narrow corner of the U.S. and much narrow corner, big narrow corner of the world, that's my viewpoint. There's always been, at least for me, right, um, Asian media, right? Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, Pokemon, Ghost in the Shell, Rurouni Kenshin, what was it? Adult Swim, right? And all this other stuff, and it endures because it's fun, it's cool, it's interesting. The Yu Hakusho, right? It endures because it goes beyond race and beyond barriers. You don't have to be Japanese or Chinese or Korean or anything else to understand what's going on. It gets localized because most Americans don't speak Japanese or Chinese or whatever. But the themes are enduring. They're just plain good works. Fullmetal Alchemist is an amazing, damn good work, and for me, it's the best manga I ever read. I have read many manga before and a few since, and I haven't found anything that even measures up to the quality of storytelling in the U.S. or in future works. So thank you, because that's an amazing story, right? But I think that's pretty much all I have to say about it. So please let me know what you think, and I will see you on the next one. Have a good day and night wherever you are.